I want to thank everybody for taking time together with us here today. We just concluded a briefing provided by City of Dallas emergency personnel to update us on what happened yesterday and where we are today and where we are going forward. I'll start out by making 2 points, and that is, as we were briefed earlier, as our understanding that what happened yesterday is the second worst rainstorm and flooding in Dallas since 1932, and the second worst on record. And so what people in the Dallas area, as well as this entire region, sustained was an extraordinary challenge. I might note that it's kind of remarkable and maybe typical Texas, that as we went through this historic rainstorm yesterday, and as we gather to visit with you about today, the sun is coming out. This is Texas. But also, being Texas means being responsive to challenges like this. And so I want to commend the mayor, as well as the entire city staff, as well as others around the entire region, for responding so prolifically to the enormous challenge that they dealt with yesterday. I have had the opportunity to speak with several officials around the region. I did speak with Fort Worth Mayor Parker to visit with her about the challenges that Fort Worth was dealing with. And she told me what Dallas told me, and that is, as of this time, they have no unmet needs. Another official that I spoke with was the mayor of Mesquite. You may know that through this entire storm so far, there's been only one reported death, and that unfortunate death occurred in Mesquite. And I wanted to visit with the mayor about it and make sure that he and his city had everything they needed to respond to the challenges that they are facing. So some facts and figures, and then I will turn it over to the mayor. In addition to talking with those other local officials, I've also visited with the FEMA administrator. One thing that happens in the aftermath of a storm like this is we work with all local jurisdictions to determine the extent to which there has been any damage, so that damage can be aggregated and then reported to FEMA to determine whether or not the state as well as the local regions will qualify for a federal disaster declaration, as well as any type of potential federal assistance. Also, I will add, with regard to effects across the entire region, the mayor will talk about what happened in Dallas. I will talk to some extent what happened in Dallas, but a little bit more geographically about the regions of the state of Texas that have been affected. We have more than 100 homes being damaged or impacted in some way. We also have statewide, what the state has provided is, for one, water rescue boats and personnel. There are 11 Texas A&M Task Force swift water boat squads and 1 floodwater boat squad that have been deployed, which includes 24 boats and 81 personnel. DPS has sent out tactical marine units. The Texas Parks and Wildlife has also sent out search and rescue teams and boats. In addition to that, damage assessments are being made across the entire region. Let me get into this because I want to provide you information that is very important to get out to the public. Once again, in order for the state and the region to qualify from federal assistance, the federal agencies need our damage assessments. There is a reporting system that I want to provide to you to provide to the public. And that is, once it is safe to return, and if you have insurance, call and make a claim for your insurance recovery. Then use the Texas Division of Emergency Management Self-Reporting Damage Assessment Tool. It's called ISTAT. It can be found at this web address, damage.tdem.texas.gov. Once again, that is damage.tdem.texas.gov. Well, needless to say, the effect of this storm has been dramatic here in Dallas, in Fort Worth, but across multiple regions around the state of Texas. And as a result, I'm about to sign a state disaster declaration. This declaration includes 23 counties across Texas due to damaging winds and heavy rainfall, including flash flooding and river flooding. Right now, it includes 23 counties: Kemp County, Culberson, Dallas, Duval, Ellis, El Paso, Henderson, Hopkins, Hudspeth, Kaufman, Kerr, Live Oak, Marion, Montague, Navarro, Pecos, Raines, Smith, Tarrant, Upshur, Van Sant, Webb, and Wood. Importantly, additional counties may be added as the storm system works its way through the state. I will sign it at this time. Here is the disaster declaration on behalf of those 23 counties, to which we will add any more counties that sustain damages as a result of these storms. At this time, I'd like to pass it off to the Dallas Mayor, Eric Johnson.
Good afternoon, or good morning still, I suppose, and thank you, Governor Abbott. I want to welcome you home, first of all, and second, I want to say thank you for being here. You know, it's one thing to send your well wishes, it's another thing to physically be present. I've learned that as mayor. Being there is important, and I appreciate you always being willing to show up for us at times like this. I want to thank your team as well, Chief Nim Kidd, who I've gotten to spend a lot of time with over these past 3+ years as we've dealt with a series of unprecedented, so-called unprecedented disasters in this city. And I want to thank all of you for being here, everyone who's behind me here today. Yesterday, our city was tested once again by extreme weather. I've heard this called a once-in-a-thousand-year weather event. And we also know, as the governor mentioned, that this was the first time in 90 years that we've had this much rain in a 24-hour period. But whatever you want to call it, whatever time frame you want to put on it, we got hit pretty hard, and we got hit in a historic way. The sky opened up, and soon after, our streets closed down. The storm was immense. You've all seen the images and the videos, the water rising in people's homes and our businesses, flooded underpasses, submerged vehicles, knocked out traffic signals, delayed flights in and out of DFW that caused, a national snarl in our transportation system, city parks that looked more like lakes, and of course, our very brave men and women of our police department and our fire department wading through those very flash flood waters to help those who've been stranded. The flood waters receded quickly yesterday evening, and for most people in our city, I'm happy to report that today is a return to normalcy. For them, Monday will be nothing more than an unusually wet and dreary memory, and for that I'm very glad. Anytime that we get out of something like this without a single fatality or any catastrophic damage to our city, we should all be grateful. And God knows we needed the rain after all the heat in this past summer. But for some people, this is important, for some of us, the effects of this storm are going to linger for a while. This storm meant for some of our residents, Governor, that their lives have been upended. Some people's cars that they depended on to get to work aren't going to be running. For some of our parents who have to miss work and business owners who have to close shop, this is a serious problem for them. And these impacts are going to be felt all over and throughout our economy. For example, by way of personal anecdote, the daycare where my daughter attends is actually closed due to flood damage. That's something that my family is fortunate enough to be able to withstand, but it's something that I know many people in our city will have a hard time dealing with. For those who are just struggling to get by, who are trying to scrimp and save and do everything they can, this flood could be a significant setback for them. And while we are in the midst right now of a full damage assessment of our city, we do need people, as the governor mentioned, to report their damage to the Texas Division of Emergency Management. And we're going to do everything we can to help folks who've been impacted by this storm. So again, I want to thank Governor Abbott for coming here, physically being here with us in Dallas as we assess and deal with the impact of the storm. I also want to take this time to give heartfelt thanks to all the elected officials and their staffs that I've heard from personally asking what they could do to help. So I want to thank the White House, Congressman Veazey, Mayor Turner in Houston, and even Mayor John Cooper in Nashville, Tennessee, all reached out with their offers of support and help. And finally, I want to say that I'm proud of our city. Once again, I'm very grateful to all of you who've heeded our warnings and stayed off of our streets until it was safe to go back. I'm very, very proud of the men and women of the Dallas Police Department and Dallas Fire Rescue who, like they always do, put themselves in harm's way to help others. And I'm very, very proud of our emergency operations staff here at the city, led by Rocky Vaz, for coordinating our response to this storm. Every single time that our city has been tested, we've proven our strength, our resilience, and of course, our generosity. And we did that again this time. And we're going to continue to do that as we recover in the days and weeks ahead. So again, Governor, thank you. Welcome home. And I guess we'll open it up to questions unless there's any more comments.
We got more comments.
We got more comments, okay.
Now
Chief
from
Kidd, thank you.
From Chief Kidd, the Chief of the Texas Division of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Mayor. You know, as a first responder and emergency manager, life safety is always our #1 priority. And I cannot let this moment go by without thanking the mayor and his team for ensuring that the city has the resources in police and fire and EMS in order to be able to respond and protect. 15 inches of rain in a 5-hour period with very little advance warning will overwhelm any capability and resource. And the work that was done by the men and the women out there on the streets was second to none. And I'm very grateful for them, and I'm glad that they are there for us. Yes. Second is we've appear to have passed the most dangerous part of this storm. There is still plenty of water out. I highly encourage parents to keep their kids out of floodwater and make sure that we don't get out there and start playing in floodwater. Even though we may have a little bit of a blue sky today with a little bit more rain, we still have many flood dangers that are out there that we need to be aware of. As we turn from life safety to property conservation and property protection, damage assessments will be the second most important thing on our list to accomplish over the next couple of days. In order to get federal public assistance from FEMA, our statewide needs to recognize a little under $50 million of uninsured loss to public property. From an IA perspective, the amount of homes that are damaged, the thumb rule is about 800 that don't have insurance. But as the governor said, he spoke to the FEMA administrator this morning, and she has pledged her support for anything that we can do. She can't do anything until we give her the damage assessments. That's why it's so critical that, Mayor, we be working with your team and all the cities to get that information in front of the governor as fast as we possibly can. Finally, if you were impacted by flood damages, file with your insurance company first if you have flood insurance. We'll be sharing that information as well. If you do not have flood insurance, I highly encourage you to talk to your insurance agent because flood insurance has a 30-day waiting period. And during the drought, I don't think anybody thought we needed flood insurance. You know, we're in the middle of hurricane season, and yes, they do come up this far north, and yes, we have weather patterns. So if you do not have flood insurance and have the means to do that, I highly encourage that right now. Once again, I'll mention damage.tdem.texas.gov is the location for you to file your reports with us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chief. Now we'll take some questions. Go ahead.
Stormwater ponds here in the city. How well do you think those function? Do you think that they just overwhelmed, or do you need more, or how do they function yesterday?
Well, I think we have Dallas Water Utilities here who can speak directly to the status of the infrastructure, but I did learn in our briefing that the water that hit our city did not hit evenly. There were differences in terms of rainfall and where that rainfall occurred, and so I think that accounts for some of the difference in outcomes and where flooding occurred in our city. But I think Dallas Water Utilities can speak specifically to the infrastructure situation.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. I'm Terry Lowry. I'm the Director of Dallas Water Utilities. Yes, exactly what the mayor said. The quantities of rainfall that fell within the time period that they fell, I don't care what kind of system we had in place, there was going to be flooding. Some of our older areas of the city with smaller infrastructure were impacted, We are doing some major improvements. We've spent almost $1 billion improving our larger infrastructure, and we're starting a capital improvement program to go out in the neighborhoods and connect all of that, which in the future will greatly help us.
Ms. Lowry, while you have a microphone, is there any gauge or assessment at this point for the city of Dallas where specifically you were impacted more than other places?
It seemed that it was pretty widespread across the city. The northern parts of the city did not experience as much rainfall, but along the east, down south, and across the west, there were high rainfall amounts that fell, so those obviously were the most impacted.
The area around Baylor Hospital was particularly a concern. That area has flooded again and again and again. At what point does the city of Dallas say, we may have a problem?
Well, the city of Dallas did that a few years ago. With the bond programs, we have been completing the Mill Creek Tunnel, and when that is in place in 2025, that will immediately alleviate the area around the tunnel and south of the tunnel, and that will improve that area.
Governor Abbott, I know you went through where people should file in order to get some relief from this, but for people that are at home, how long is that process, and how long will they be waiting until they can say, okay, here's a check, I can really start fixing things?
Well, it takes a while because it is a process. Again, let's start with the beginning, and that is for most individuals, whether they are a homeowner or a business owner, they typically have insurance. And so their first go-to is their insurance company, and that is something that can be turned around this week. And so, and then after that, to the extent that they are uninsured, we need to aggregate the damages across the entire region. Our goal would be to try to have an early assessment of all of those damages by the end of this week. And so we should have some level of notification with our ongoing cooperation with FEMA about where we stand by later this week.
Governor, you've gone down this road before, you've seen this before, but you've already said at this point only 100 homes with an emergency declaration for 23 counties. Is that a message to FEMA that simply they can't help us?
Well, first, I don't know if you're making reference to this, but you may remember the tornado that came through Dallas. And there was significant damages to many homes, some homes completely lost, but it did not qualify for FEMA assistance because most of those homes were insured. That said, in talking to the FEMA administrator earlier today, one thing that she voiced concern about were people of low income levels that may be disproportionately impacted by a storm like this. And FEMA may be taking a different approach in the way that they respond to this so that they can provide more assistance to low-income Dallasites or Texans. But that said, we still need to aggregate the information and provide it to them before they can begin the assessment process.
My question is, where's the wherewithal for the state of Texas to intervene where FEMA cannot?
Well, again, on the intervention, that typically comes with regard to insurance, and we just need to find out where that is. Most people who have a home or business are fully insured. I will tell you this, and that is most governments, like cities, are self-insured, and that's a choice they make. And so they would then qualify, if added together, for public assistance from FEMA.
The city of Dallas lost a full damage of these 22 squad cars. This is a city that's already struggling to replace squad cars. How does that impact DPD? It was more.
No, well, okay, we always have all the experts back here who can always go a little deeper in any of these questions that you want. But I will tell you, it certainly has an impact because we need those squad cars. We need more squad cars. That's why we've been pushing to have that added to the budget. We definitely are going to have to look at replacing those that are not able to be repaired, and we're going to have to look at the lag time that we're experiencing across fire and police in getting new vehicles. And we've been talking about what we can do to try to jump the line, so to speak, ahead of private businesses to be able to get those, because those are so important to deliver public safety. Again, I'll let someone from the police department, if they want, to speak to that directly. But no, we can't afford to lose 25 squad cars and not replace them. We would definitely need to do that. And so it's something that we'll be looking at in this budget cycle for sure. But I know John Fortune is back here and Chief Garcia are back here if they'd like to speak to it more directly.
So actually, the tally is actually up to 28 cars that were damaged, that we don't know the extent of the damages are. We did our very best to get vehicles that were under routine maintenance, like oil changes and such, to get out of maintenance, to get back in service as quickly as possible. The car issue obviously is an issue that has been is front and center for us, but help is on the way. The mayor, the council, with the budget process, in addition to the city manager's office, recognizes there was an issue and helps on the way with the cars. So obviously, again, losing 28 patrol vehicles is not positive, but we're going to have to do what we can, double up officers, two-person patrols, possibly more until help's on the way. But as the mayor pointed out, and also it's not just our issue. I know our partners in fire lost apparatus as well. And we need to figure out some ways and hopefully work together with the governor and others to force some legislation that would allow for public safety vehicles to get to the front of the line.
Governor, can I ask you a question about not just this event yesterday, which the mayor referred to as potentially a 1,000-year flood, catastrophic damage, heat and wildfires and record heat this summer. A year and a half ago, as you well know, we had record freeze, a deadly freeze that killed hundreds of people. At what point, if ever, do you ever discuss or have a conversation about the effects of climate change and their potential impact on what we're seeing?
So we have constant conversations about what we categorize as extreme weather. One thing that you just articulated is that we are dealing with more extreme weather patterns. To be specific, this year it's been reported that the time period from April through the end of July was the hottest on record in the history of Texas. But to show you how we prepare for things like that, ERCOT and the PUC prepared for extreme weather. And they made sure that the power grid was going to have the power that was needed in order to sustain the extreme weather. And what they were able to ensure in the aftermath of the 14 laws that I signed that led to reforms in the power system in the state of Texas, they were able to deal with a dozen record usage demands of power with ease without ever losing power in the power grid, making sure that no Texan has lost power because of the power grid in the aftermath of the reforms that we signed. The point is this: we're constantly looking at what extreme weather may lead to, whether it be power demand, extreme heat, extreme cold, heavy water, or even drought. Speaking of drought, as an example, we're working on ways with the Texas Water Board to make sure we will be able to more fully address the needs of people in various regions of the state of Texas in the event that we do have increased droughts going forward, as well as plugging in the increased population that we will have coming to the state of Texas.
Are you concerned about climate change?
We constantly focus on issues such as extreme weather, and we want to be prepared for whatever type of weather may be coming our way.
Can you even say climate change? Can you even say that? I'd like to ask the mayor one thing, if I may. You referred to this a little bit, but the city's commitment to flood control, this is an enormous undertaking. It's very expensive. It takes a very long time to get it all done. And there are some really big projects underway right now. Is there a commitment here in this city for that kind of expense and need?
I think that you certainly have that commitment from me, and we're discussing right now as a council, and I don't want to speak for them, but I think that if their constituents' wishes are being reflected in their positions, I think that what constituents are wanting is for us to make sure that our city is resilient and able to withstand these weather events. And so when I was asked the question before about the infrastructure condition, the reality is we're always sort of looking at that and talking about how we're going to address the areas of our infrastructure that could use strengthening. The storm and this is an interesting fact, I think, it dumped a record amount of water on our city in a very short period of time. It raises questions about, our infrastructure condition when you see how much water, hit places like Fair Park and South Dallas and how the infrastructure held up. That's a discussion that's an ongoing discussion at our city right now about how to address equity issues like that with respect to our infrastructure. So the equity conversation is going to be taking place as we look not only at our current budget, but as we look at our capital programs and our bond program to see where that infrastructure needs to be strengthened. Chief Kidd is right, and people who've pointed out, there is no, and Terry Lowry is right, there is no infrastructure that can withstand 15 inches of water in 5 hours. But it doesn't absolve us of the responsibility to look and see where we have some deficiencies. We're going to be looking at that as we do this damage assessment. We're going to figure out what parts of our city were hit harder and maybe need more help, and we're going to figure out how to make sure our city is not inequitable in that way. But it's an ongoing conversation, and I believe the council is committed to that, not only in our current budget, but in our bond program as well. But that remains to be seen because we haven't decided what's going to be in that next bond program.
I don't think
Don't believe so.
Mayor, is the city taking a different approach than they did after the tornadoes to the assessments? Or do you think that the main difference between then and maybe now would be the area that it was hit because of the uninsured figure? Or are you guys doing something differently? Obviously, already you're promoting reporting more than after the tornado. So what different approach is the city taking, if at all?
Well, I'm not sure we're promoting it any more than we did before. I think we tried very hard to make sure we got every dollar that we were entitled to last time. But I'll let Rocky, who's in charge of that process for the city, speak to how we're going to approach it. But the bottom line is we want to document every dollar of uninsured damage we possibly can to make sure we get that declaration if we're entitled to it. But I'll let Rocky speak to the specifics of the approach.
No, and just echo what the mayor said. We're not doing it any differently, but there's the new tool that ISTAT was not available during that time, during the tornado. Now we have that tool, so we are promoting that more, and that's what you see. And we'll be reaching out through our council members to encourage people to go and, do the damage assessment, send us the data, and like the governor and Chief Kidd said, that's what will help us get through a FEMA declaration.
Hang on. Oh.
He wants to answer. He wants to finish my answer.
I'm not a reporter or anything, but I'm here to ask, I have people in my neighborhood who got flooded out. They have sick family members. Do you have any contact of people that they could call or maybe fund some hotel, because the house is just flooded and this guy is sick? So that's why I'm here to ask, who do we contact?
Rocky Vaz is definitely the person to talk to and probably
So as soon as the press
offline.
conference is over, we'll get Rocky and the Red Cross with you. Yes, ma'am. And sir, if I can go back to your question, it's a very specific question. I'm glad you asked it the way you did. I want to go back to the tornadoes that came through Dallas that did not get a federal declaration, because this is important for the citizens to understand. Homes that have a mortgage typically have insurance. Homes that don't, it's a choice on insurance. But I got information from FEMA this morning from the floodplain administrators. It appears, and I haven't had a full chance to digest it yet, but it appears about half of the properties in Dallas County that may be in a special flood hazard area don't have flood insurance. So remember, insured loss does not count towards our federal threshold. The city of Dallas did everything right last time during that tornado request, and everything that they provided us was the right data. The point was there was so much insured loss that did not trigger the federal qualifications. I believe this time if we see more rain and as this water moves down towards the coast and the eastern of the state, which it will, we may hit federal thresholds for a major disaster declaration through this event.
Great, thank you guys so much.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you, guys. My pleasure. Let me tell this guy something. I'm going to pass by real quick. I think I asked you.